Welp, it does not feel good to start 2020 off of a loss. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, Clint McClain. And this week we are headed to the PNC Arena in Raleigh, North Carolina. It feels so damn good to be on week 2. That's right, the UFC is back and in full swing, and I could not be happier. We've got more fights to break down, even coming off of a uninspiring first event of 2020. I am still high on my MMA shit, and I can't wait for another week. So first thing we have got to do is relive the horror that was you. I don't know why I'm beating up myself so bad. I just had high expectations. I wanted to come into 2020 and I wanted to hit the ground running. We learned a lot in 2019. We made a lot of mistakes. We really started to refine the way we handle things here on the Die Hard MMA podcast, and we made a lot of really damn good reads. But unfortunately, we didn't bet every single one of our good reads, and some of our good reads weren't so good. So let's first and foremost, we're going to recap all of UFC 246 because a whole lot of interesting shit went down there, and then we will get into a couple other housekeeping items before we move on to UFC Raleigh. Real quick, I want to shout out our sponsors one more time, the boys over at GOAT Capital Sports. Hope you guys gave them a follow. Hope you checked them out on Twitter. They absolutely crushed it on Sunday with the football. And this week, they're actually running a special 20% off if you use the code Die Hard MMA. That's right, folks. They are giving a 20% discount to Die Hard listeners only. So head on over to GOAT Capital Sports on Twitter. Check them out. And if you sign up using the promo code Die Hard MMA, you can get 20% off of their services. Tell them Clint sent you. So the first fight of UFC 246 went almost exactly as I said. Sabina Mazo and JJ Aldrich, it was a really, really close, hairy split decision, and the judges gave it to Sabina, and that's exactly what I was talking about. For some reason, I just felt it in my soul that JJ was not going to be able to pull that out, and essentially all it did was came down to round 2, and I think what happened is Sabina Mazo finished that fight stronger, that round stronger than JJ did, and that always leaves the impression if you do good on the first half of the round and then your opponent finishes strong, they're probably going to win the round just because that's the most recent thing the judges have seen before they write down their scores for the round at the end. So unfortunately, I did score the fight the same as the judges. I had Sabina Mazo winning very happily that we passed. What the hell? I'm already stumbling over my words here. Very happy that we passed on this fight because I did not like the price on Sabina Mazo. I wanted to bet JJ Aldrich, but that's one of those ones where, like, every once in a while we got to remember betting on value doesn't always pay the bills. Thinking, it's a coin flip fight, we're getting even money or plus 100 on JJ, so we should go ahead and take that. Would have been a loser. 2020 hindsight, definitely a square perspective for sure, but happy we didn't put our money on the wrong side there. And even if I had bet Sabina Mazo, I wouldn't have been happy about it because it was so damn close the way she gave up the entire first round, and really it looked like JJ was coming out strong at the beginning of round 2. I would have thought we were dead in the water and would have been sweating my balls off. So really, really good pass, really good no bet. Now, the second fight of the night, this is where things already got off to a little bit of, I guess we'll call it a shit show. So Justine Ledet, we got him at plus 100, and this is another fight that I felt was really going kind of the way that I had predicted. He was very clearly the more experienced fighter. He was picking his shots. He was doing a good job of landing when Cameron was throwing those wild-ass, flashy, spinning kicks that were nowhere near finding their mark, and I gotta blame Bird, what's her name, the judge that's just maybe the worst judge in the history of MMA judging. I can't believe that they still let Adelaide Bird judge MMA fights. I try not to be disrespectful of people, but I even tweeted at Dana White and I was like, this bitch is still judging fights. She still has a job doing this. What are you guys thinking? I know it's the commission. I know Dana White has absolutely no sway over who the judges are, but we got to find a way to get her out of there, man. She's just bad. So anyway, they read the scorecards off. It's a very close back and forth fight, and this is another one of those ones where, honestly, if you think Kemmerer won at 29-28, okay, I can see your argument. I thought Justin Ledet won 29-28. It was very, very thin, very, very close. Obviously, I had, bet goggles on. I wanted my guy to win, so maybe I was a little bit biased in this case. But when the judges read off 30-27, I thought it was in the bag. I was like, the only person that could possibly have won this fight 30-27 was Justin Ledet. So then when they call Alexa Kamer's name out, I was like, what? So maybe I had beer goggles. Maybe I had bet goggles. I might have to just go back and rewatch that fight for my own sanity's sake. That fight was maybe a little bit close, but I liked the angle that we had on it. So unfortunately, post a first bet of 2020 loss, and that didn't feel good. But we bounced right back with a win. Askar Askarov and Tim... Oh, you know what? I'm skipping one. My bad. We got to back up a little bit. Back up. Drew Dober and Nasrat Haqparast. Holy shit. So... this is another damn good no bet because I was sold on Nasrat Haqparast. I am so happy that we didn't put him in like a 2-unit parlay or some shit because I knew that line was wide, but I absolutely thought Nasrat was winning that. And the speed and the precision of Drew Dober to land just monstrous shot to land and knock Hazrat down. That was incredible. I've always been a fan of Drew Dober. I like what he does. He's one of those guys that I guess, kind of like I talked about Andre Fili last time, he seems like he's never been able to put it all together for the MMA game. That's something that's very, very difficult to do. So it's not a strike against him that he hasn't been able to do that, but it looks like he finally has. I mean, he dropped a guy who I thought was way faster than he was, and maybe it's an accuracy and precision thing as opposed to a speed thing, but damn, he looked fast. So heavily underestimated Drew Dober. That was my bad. There were a couple of opportunities on this card that, we will probably never get back. I know a lot of people who cashed on Drew Dober, and congratulations, because if you hit that dog line, you deserve that win. Holy cow. So now we get to pat ourselves on the back a little bit. Askar Askarov just absolutely handles Tim Elliott, and Elliott went full Diaz in round 3, and I don't know what he was thinking because he was down on the scorecards. Askarov was piecing him up and controlling the range. Tim Elliott couldn't even touch him, and he just dropped his hands and was marching forward like somehow that was going to make the judges think that he was winning the fight. I mean, I know you're saying your punches aren't hurting me, I'm taking no damage, this is nothing, but you're not scoring either. That is just a terrible strategy. It's fun to watch from a fan perspective. Maybe you can get in your opponent's head a little bit, but not a hardened Russian like Askar Askarov. That's never going to work. And the funny thing about this fight is I was almost entirely wrong about it. I had it completely backwards. So I thought Askar Askarov was going to be the one with the ground advantage, and I gave Elliott a slight advantage on the feet, but Askar's boxing was really crisp, and really what locked the fight up for him, in my opinion, were the big, heavy right hands that he was landing on Tim almost at will, and he dropped him at one point. Well, I say dropped him. He looked like he was doing the sack of potatoes, keel over, severed from your senses type of knockout. Somehow Tim Elliott recovered from that, like mid-fall down. He was on his way to the ground, somehow regained consciousness and stepped right back up to stay in the fight. Unreal, the chin on that guy. But it felt good to cash on that one, and it felt good because really I felt very comfortable with it. I knew unless he got caught in some kind of a fluky submission or something in the third round, we had that thing locked up. So that felt great. The next fight, Andre Fili, Sadiq Youssef. I feel like it's a bit of a missed opportunity. I said Sadiq. I kind of scared myself with Andre Fili. That was a recency bias, something we've got to keep in mind. The recency bias really bit me on this whole card. There were a couple of other situations where I noticed that it got me, and you've got to be very, very careful with that. You can't let recency bias cloud your decision making, and it did for me, for sure. So Andre Fili, he did exactly basically what I would have expected him to do if it wasn't for his last fight and that big KO. So we very comfortably could have bet Sadiq Yusuff. I know a lot of people did, and congrats again if you cashed on that one, because that was a missed opportunity on our part. Sadiq just far and away looked like the better fighter. He locked up rounds 1 and 2, and I know a lot of people were complaining about him in round 3, but he completely let off the gas. He felt completely comfortable. He wasn't scared of anything that Fili was throwing at him, so he just took it easy in round 3 and coasted out an easy decision victory. Now, the main event, in my opinion, Roxanne Modafferi and Maycee Barber. We lost the under 1.5 here, and holy shit, I could not have gotten this thing more wrong. And I am so sorry. I want to issue a formal public apology to my girl, Roxanne Modafferi. I doubted her, and the recency bias bit me here because, once again, what Maycee Barber did to my girl Jillian Robertson, I think that Jillian Robertson is a younger, fresher, I thought stronger version of what we see in someone like Roxanne Modafferi. I think Jillian's got a much higher ceiling. I think she's going places. And the way that Maycee Barber was able to just handle and stuff everything that Jillian had for her and then pound her the way she did to get the referee to come in for that standing KO, I thought we were going to see round 2 of that. I really thought it was going to be the exact same fight. And Roxanne leveled up. I know everyone's talking about how cringy her Majin Vegeta Super Saiyan thing was at the weigh-ins. I loved it. I laughed my ass off. That was great. And she has put some time in. She did nothing but Muay Thai for this camp, and you could really tell her striking was so much crisper, and she was hitting Barber with shots that showed power that we've just never seen out of Roxanne Modafferi. And that was something. She's getting closer to 40. She's very much, you would think, at the end of her career, and she's still improving. And I think that's the big thing, is I shorted her. I did not think that we would see improvements out of Roxanne Modafferi at this stage in her game. So again, I'm sorry to Roxanne. I'm sorry to the listeners, because I messed up, and I could have gotten you guys on that plus 700. We, as the diehard MMA hardcores, could have cashed a 7-1 bet on Roxanne Modafferi very, very easily if I had just, kind of read my own bias. But I got to apologize. The recency bias got me this event, and I'm also a little bit rusty from all the time off between these events and the layoff after the 2019 cards. So we will make sure that that doesn't happen again. If you did hit Roxanne Modafferi one more time, just congrats, because that's an incredible cash. So we move on to the main card, and another mistake, unfortunately, on my part. Anthony Showtime Pettis. Now, pre-fight, I thought Carlos Diego Ferreira. I saw the writing on the wall and went, oh, this is an easy Carlos Diego spot. And then after looking into everything and digging deeper into it, I kind of talked myself into a Pettis spot. And I don't want to say that was recency bias, because obviously everything pointed against Pettis here. Maybe I got a little too fancy. Maybe I was a little too smart for my own good. But either way, Anthony Pettis is getting crumpled up and tossed in the do not bet trash bin. Once again, unless we have a very, very, very damn good reason to do so. I liked the line here. I thought he had the tools. In round 1, he landed some big shots on Carlos, but they just didn't seem to affect him. I thought that Carlos was going to show some durability problems, and he definitely did not. He walked through everything Pettis had to offer and then flattened him out and choked him out. First person to submit Anthony Pettis. Carlos Diego made it look easy. The next fight, Brian Kelleher versus Ode Osborne. This is one where I messed up again. I told you all that Brian Kelleher was the side here. I really believed that this was a spot where he could get right, and we're fading the young up-and-comer, the guy who's got the adrenaline dump, the guy who's making his debut, all the pressure's on him. Brian came out and made it look easy. Brian showed this guy what the UFC looks like at the high level, and that's really what I count on when I make plays like that. So I'm pissed off at myself for missing out. I set a number in my head. I wanted to get Brian around plus 130 or plus 140, and he never got over plus 125, unless he got there like maybe right before fight time, which I wasn't hunting for the lines right before fight time. I was drinking Fireball with my father-in-law and, talking shit and stuff like that. So I wasn't looking for a bet right before they kicked off, unfortunately. So if it did hit their last minute, I missed it. If you got on Brian Kelleher, you're freaking welcome, because he smashed Ode the way that these UFC veterans usually tend to. And that was an underdog spot that we just flat out missed. Now, we got it right, though, on the next one, because Alexei Olenek, my old man, the sub master, the boa constrictor, he made us sweat for this one. He completely gasses out in round 2. And I'm like, he's going down, man. He didn't get the submission in round 1. Everyone's going to yell at me. Everyone on Twitter is going to make fun of me because I bet on a 42-year-old man against a current UFC level fighter. Everyone's going to be like, what is wrong with you? You're the worst capper on the internet. And then, thank God, Maurice Green gassed out just as hard. Alexei got on top, smothered him, and never let him stand back up. And I was scared for this thing going to round 2. I would never have wanted to see it going into round 3, because if Alexei went into round 3, he might have just laid down. He might have just been like, you win, I'm done, tapped the canvas, face down, didn't even take a punch. I mean, he was so gassed from trying to submit Green in round 1. I'm happy he got there. The submission, he finishes inside the distance. That was a good cash to kind of right the ship a little bit here for us. And then the co-main event, what is there to say about Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington? The fight played out kind of like I thought it would, except the wrong girl was the one pressing up against the cage. Holly Holm had no intention of ever fighting. She was as gun-shy as I said that she was going to be. She very much still had PTSD from her last fight. And honestly, the thing that surprised me most is I didn't expect Holly to be that dominant in the clinch game. Raquel Pennington, that's her game. She clinches people, she roughs them up, she pushes them around, and she's the pressure fighter here. Holly Holm is usually the counter striker. She's worked on her wrestling, sure, but we've never seen it used offensively to that extent, to that degree. And it really floored me that Raquel had no answer. I mean, maybe she didn't have an answer because she never expected Holly to fight that kind of a game, so she didn't drill it. She didn't have the, the defenses or the escapes or anything like that ready because she never thought she was going to need it. I'm not entirely sure. It was an incredibly disappointing fight, and the people out there that are going to shout, oh, Holly Holm, easy, I cashed an easy bet on Holly Holm, I still kind of think that you're wrong. I mean, if this was a fight, that should have been a whole lot more competitive and a whole lot closer. Props to Holly for picking a good game plan, but that was something that nobody could have seen coming, and I just feel unfortunate for having stepped straight into that trap. That was highly unfortunate. I'm kind of upset about that one. So we, with that, locked up a losing night. There was no way for us to recover, but the main event was the easiest cash that I maybe have ever made in my entire life. Everyone got on me when I said that Donald Cerrone was a hand-picked matchup. Everyone told me that I was being disrespectful of Donald Cerrone when I said that the UFC picked him out specifically to get Conor a win in this spot. No, this fight was not fixed. No, Donald Cerrone did not take a dive. Conor is that good. Conor has added on muscle and power. And Donald Cerrone is coming off of 2 of the worst beatings of his lifetime. And the man is 36 years old. He can't recover in the amount of time that he was given between fights. He needs to take an entire year off, or we're just never going to see the old Donald Cerrone again. If he keeps coming back in these 3-month breaks, he's just going to keep on getting wrecked by people because he's older now. His chin and his durability is gone. On top of that, I tweeted this out today. He is off now, thank God for this, medically suspended because of facial fractures. Facial fractures. That's not even a durability issue. That's Conor lighting his head up. Conor hit him so hard he literally broke his face. Welcome back, Conor McGregor. And I am so happy. That was the easiest money, the under 1.5. We didn't even have to sweat it. The second Conor threw something, you were like, oh, okay, I know where this is going. Even though he was talking about getting rounds in, even though he was talking about feeling out the cage and getting some cage time, no, he came out with bad intentions and was ready to make a statement, and I'm so happy he did. I mean, I was listening to another podcast earlier today, and they were talking about Dan Blazarian. If you listen to my podcast, you probably know know who Dan Bilzerian is, but just in case you're my mom and you don't know who Dan Bilzerian is, Dan is a professional poker player who basically lives the life that every 13-year-old boy dreams of. So he travels the world, he takes videos, he smokes weed, he has no less than 7 hot girls on him at any one point in time, and then he posts it all on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, showing the world just how badass he is. He's also shredded from head to toe, so he's a good poker player. He plays against millionaires, he shows them how to party, and he takes money off of them in these high stakes games. So he's got money pouring out of his pockets. He is rich, filthy rich as shit. And then it's almost like he's handing out scholarships or something, because these gorgeous women just flock to him. And then of course he features them in his videos and stuff like that, but they've always got to have their tops off. I mean, that's got to be part of the deal, I'm sure. But seriously, every single one of us at 13 was like, if I could grow up, I would be Dan Bilzerian. Anyway, point of the story is he put like $1 million on Donald Cowboy Cerrone. He put the tweet out with a picture where it was just lines of stacks of cash, and from what I understand, someone tried to actually like kind of count it out and figure it out based on what they could see available to them, and mathed it up to get an estimate, and it was nearly $1 million. He put that on Donald Cerrone, and what the guy was listening to the podcast was he goes, "How would you feel losing $1 million in 40 seconds?" And I was just like, oh, I mean, I feel bad losing $100 or $50. You know what I mean? Like when we bet these fights and it doesn't go my way, it hurts. I cannot imagine putting that kind of cash down and having it lose that fast. I mean, first off, you're a fan of the guy. Seeing him get knocked out like that, never fun, never easy. But losing that kind of scratch on top of it, oh, it's cringeworthy, man. I don't even want to think about it. All right, so there we go. We have officially recapped UFC 246, and we went 4-3. Luckily, because of what we do here, we take dog lines, everybody. We bet the dog. We're always getting that extra juice. We didn't even lose a full unit. We're down 0.8 units. So we are in the red, but it's only the first fight of the year, and there's plenty of action to come. If that Ledet decision had gone our way, we would be up a unit instead of being down almost a unit. And I mean, I can't say much about the other ones, unfortunately. Rocky and Pettis, they were the wrong sides. And as much as I loved the Macy Roxy under 1.5, that one, I don't want to say it easily could have gone our way. I mean, it damn near did, because Roxy was on top of her and looking for a submission. We almost still cashed our under 1.5 bet with Roxy being the one to get the finish instead of Macy, which would have just, I wish I could come on the podcast today and tell you that's what happened, because that would have been maybe the most amazing thing I had ever said. To be right and incredibly wrong at the exact same time, but still make money, it would have been beautiful. All right. Enough about Dan Bilzerian and missed opportunities. Let's move on to the good stuff. So a couple of important shout outs. My guy, Michael Lunday, huge thank you and shout out to you, my friend. We've got some new followers. We've got Buffalo Boy 13. We've got Martin Del Medico, which I'm probably butchering that name. I apologize. Jared Elliott, Kevin Cross. Welcome, everybody. Welcome you all to the Die Hard MMA family. Kyle Stevens. We are getting our numbers up there where we need to be. Adam Linden. We've got Jack the Jester, Nick Alexander. You guys got a double shout out because I just realized that those are old ones from the previous week. So thank you again for joining the Die Hard MMA family, and I am ready to go. We've got UFC Raleigh and Wall coming off of UFC 246, and sandwiched between it and UFC 247. It's not the best card in the world. It's not the best betting opportunity in the world either. It's still UFC. It's still MMA. And for those of us who are fans of only a couple of sports, and we're not that into basketball, we live and die by this shit. There's also a Bellator card going on, so plenty of stuff for us to talk about for this weekend, and let's freaking go. Oh, real quick, one final thing before we get into going over the fights. So, as you all know, I do work for SBR Sports Picks. They've got the live odds website where you can compare all the lines that are openly available right now everywhere on all the major sports books. I write for them for MMA. I go on their live shows for MMA, and they've actually recently throttled back the amount of content that they're offering for me as a producer, as a content creator. And that's because literally all they care about is numbers. I've been giving away free winners. The articles are in depth. I give good stats and good information, and we have been winning consistently on my articles just as much like we have been on the podcast. They don't care about that. All they care about is clicks. So do me a massive, massive favor. If I tweet out my articles or my videos, things like that I've done for SBR, if you guys could help me out and even click the link, even if you don't end up actually reading the article, just click it and then, after it loads, close the window or hit me a retweet, something like that. That would go a long, long way. That's income. As I tell you guys all the time, I'm not a professional sports bettor. I'm just a dude. I'm supporting a wife and a child. This is my dream gig over here doing this stuff, but that extra income definitely helps out with supporting the podcast and supporting my family. So it would mean the world to me if you guys could help me out a little bit with that so I can kind of get my content ramped back up for my side hustle. I appreciate it. The first fight of UFC Raleigh, we are looking at kicking the evening off with Herbert Burns and Nate Landwehr in the featherweight division. Now, Herbert Burns is 9-2-0. Nate the Train is 13-2-0. And this is an interesting fight. It's a double debut. We don't see those all that often anymore. Usually it seems like the UFC has a kind of a setup in mind. They've got one person that they want to win, somebody coming off of a loss, something like that. This is a weird spot where both of these guys are making their debut at the same exact time, and both of them appear to be legitimate prospects. So I've got a hard time believing that the UFC is really trying to set either of these dudes up. Herbert is the brother of Gilbert Burns, who we are very, very high on here on the podcast. One thing I noticed, though, is he seems to be a little bit out of place on his feet. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just like his brother, and his ground game is slick as hell. He's explosive off of his back. He's aggressive with submission attempts, and he does go for leg locks, which people seem to have a hard time with. He uses spider guard very well, which, yes, it's a real thing. Google it. And the thing that I've really noticed most about him, though, is that he's just uncomfortable on his feet. Where Gilbert Burns is a wrecking machine, and he seems to have the aggression and just kind of walks his opponents down, Herbert doesn't have that. He's kind of slow on the feet. He overextends. He does have a long one too, but he just kind of slings it out there, and he can be countered from that. He does the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu flop when he's uncomfortable on his feet, kind of like Damian Maia used to before he got his striking where he was comfortable. Whenever he gets hit, his opponents try to counter, anything like that, he'll just flop to his back. Now, it's a bad look when you're talking about like the judges' scorecards. It doesn't look great when someone's just flopping. He, one time on the videos that I saw, actually sold it, where a guy thought that he had clipped him and like followed him to the ground. 1 out of like 15. So not a viable strategy, in my opinion. Doesn't look good, doesn't work, and people can just walk away from you and motion for you to get back up and force you back on the feet. So when it comes to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he's miles ahead of Nate. He's definitely going to be dangerous in a ground situation, but Nate on the side of this thing, he is nicknamed the Train for a reason. This guy puts a pace on people. He just wants to brawl. He's got good head movement, powerful hooks. He checks kicks pretty well, and he's got very, very good spatial awareness. He actually has pretty good takedown defense. He's got strong, powerful hips, and one of the things that I saw him go to a lot, which I really like, is he's got this step-in uppercut. You kind of don't see it coming because it's coming from that angle, almost like the Anderson Silva front kick, where it splits the guard right up the center, and you don't really see it. I think he might be able to land that thing on Herbert Burns, and I've seen him use it multiple times. Not to great effect, but it's one of those punches that every time it whizzes by, you go, ooh, if that had landed. So I think that's going to be a tool that he can really use in this fight. He does keep his hands low, he's very hittable, and he forces his opponents to brawl with him. That's almost Gaethje style. That's kind of what he does. In this kind of a matchup, I don't know if that's going to be a problem for him, because he's going to have a speed and power advantage on the feet over Herbert Burns. I also think he's going to have a technical advantage on the feet over Herbert Burns. When he gets his opponents hurt, he does press them up against the fence, and he flurries on them against the cage. The other thing is this guy comes out in round 3, guns blazing. I think that with a guy like Burns, again, he reminds me kind of like old Damian Maia. He gasses out. He gets tired. He gets beat up on the feet. He gets demoralized. He realizes he can't hang. And if his opponent's not willing to come to the ground with him, it's going to be a problem. So I talk all the time about siblings when it comes to fighting. There's always 2 siblings, and there's the A side and the B side. There's the good sibling, the guy that made it to the UFC first, or girl, it's happened. There's the one that makes it to the UFC, the one that stands out, the one that we all remember, Dan Miller, Joe Lozon. They have another sibling, and the other sibling sucks. They get to the UFC because of that name recognition, because they do have skills, they train with their sibling, they put a couple of good wins together, and they punch their ticket to get to the UFC, and then they just can't hang. I'm worried that the 9-2, 30-year-old Herbert Burns is going to be that. He's lost 2 decisions in 2017. He hasn't fought really all that tough of competition, and it seems like he's submission or bust. 7 of his 9 wins have come by sub, and I don't know if that's because his opponent's skill level is low or if it's because he's that good at finding his way on the mat. I'm worried that this is actually a step up in competition for Herbert and not so much for Nate. He's been fighting in the M1 ring, and he's been fighting some very serious opponents over there in M1. His combined opponents' records are 71, 15, and 1. So the train, as annoying as this dude is, and just wait when the UFC promo material comes out, he's annoying as fuck. When he's as annoying as he is, the dude can fight, and I think he's the type of opponent that can put a pace on a dude like Herbert Burns. Now, the thing for me is if he does overextend, if he forces that brawl, if he pushes it just a little too hard, he can get caught. He can be a little bit over the top. He might open himself up, and Herbert will be dangerous until round 3 to catch his back and lock up some kind of a choke or something like that. But I've got just this sinking feeling that Nate is going to put a pace on Herbert, and Herbert's not going to be able to answer. So I'm actually going to throw out a flyer here. You can still get Nate the freaking Train at -115. We can see him out there at -115, and that's what we're going to lock up the first bet of the night. We're going to roll the dice a little bit here. This is one that, like I said, Burns is going to be very dangerous in certain situations, but from what I have seen, I don't know if he can keep up 3 rounds with this kid. If he gets a sub early, then, that's definitely something that can happen. But I think that Nate is by far the more well-rounded fighter here, and I think that it's obvious what Burns is looking for. So as long as Nate isn't stupid, which given what I've seen from him on tape, his record, the level of opponents that he's fought, he doesn't seem to be stupid. He should know to avoid the ground in this situation, and I do think he's going to come out with the win. -115 is a fair price to pay. Now that we've made our first pick and bet of the night, I do want to give a quick shout out. There's this YouTube handicapper named Mr. Arkansas. He's actually doing something that's pretty cool. I want to give him a shout out here. He has the MMA handicapper wars going on. It's basically a contest that he's running, and he is putting together all of the MMA cappers, all your favorite MMA handicappers and Twitter personalities, guys like my dude UFC Bro Picks. He's got Will Martin on there. He's got MMA Lock of the Night, all those kinds of things. And he's running this UFC Predictor Wars where he's actually split us all up into 4 different divisions, and he's got his own cool little point system. And based on the picks that everyone gets, he's going to have like a winner of each division, almost like you'd think of in football. And then I think there's a playoff in the end. I feel kind of cool that he discovered me and somebody shouted the Die Hard MMA podcast out to get us into this MMA Predictor Wars. And the first week wasn't fantastic. We're right in the middle of the road, but I'm going to be actively monitoring where I stand based on his scoring position. It's kind of fun. So go check out Mr. Arkansas. Check out his videos over on YouTube, and you can see the MMA Predictor Wars battle and cheer on the Die Hard MMA podcast. And all we've really got to do is beat UFC Bro Picks, because that's my boy Justine. And when you're really friends with somebody, when you really like somebody, there's nothing more that you want to do than smash them in a friendly competition. So Justine, you're going down. With that, we move to bantamweight, where Brett Johns is taking on Tony Gravely. Now, Brett Johns is an interesting case here. So we're at bantamweight. Johns is 15-2-0. Tony Gravely is 19-5-0. And Brett Johns is a judo black belt. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he is a brown belt in Muay Thai. Now, it sounds a little bit strange saying that because I'm not exactly sure how the belts work in Muay Thai. I honestly didn't think there were belts in Muay Thai. I mean, every once in a while you hear the term, he's a black belt in Muay Thai, and, we've said that a couple of times, but I don't know what the ranking system is or how you get belts in Muay Thai. I'm not sure. So just throwing that out there, that is listed as one of his accolades. He does have very, very underrated striking, though, and that's kind of why I wanted to mention the brown belt in Muay Thai, because if I think from my, base as a jiu-jitsu player, brown belt is the next thing to black belt, and you can see that when this guy strikes. His hands are damn good. He's really fast, he throws in combinations, and he's only lost to the cream of the crop. So he's 15-2. He's on a 2-fight losing skid, but that came to Aljo Sterling and Pedro Munoz. I mean, two guys that we are talking about in the top 5, maybe potential title challengers next. Those are the two guys he's lost to, and they've both been to decisions. He actually really surprised and impressed me in both of those fights. It's one of those things where you come away from a guy going, you know what, you lost, but damn, dude, like you had your moments, you looked good. And that's always something that I look for. He did struggle with the range of Aljamain Sterling. He scrambled for positions off of takedowns. He uses the cage to get back to his feet well when he gets taken down. He works the body of his opponents, which is something you all know I love because that's money in the bank for the later rounds. You can gas your opponents out by working their body and making them work for 2 rounds, and then in round 3, they're easy picking. Now, like I said, he's a judo brown belt, and he's got those judo hips. He uses those throws to defend takedowns and really scramble for position when opponents try to get in on his hips. He switches stances. He's got a really great, short, powerful lead hook that I'm a fan of, and he's also got a great chin. He's only been rocked a couple times, and when he has been, he recovers really well. He went to war with Pedro Munoz, and honestly, Pedro Munoz, I don't know what that dude's head is made out of, because the shots that Brett was landing on Pedro Munoz would have put a lot of other people out, and I have no idea how Pedro was able to wade through that and do what he did. Tony, on the flip side of this thing, is making his UFC debut. This is another guy coming off of the Dana White's Contender Series, and y'all know my angle on that. Your first big step up in competition. This is exactly why we should have pulled the trigger on Kelleher last weekend. This is a very similar spot in my opinion. Now, Gravely, he's a great wrestler, and I think that maybe is the big difference here. A lot of people are seeing the powerful takedowns, the athleticism, and they're going, oh damn, this dude's just going to grind people out. He does have good solid striking defense. He keeps his hands up high, and he's got big thick arms to block shots. He's got really fast reflexes, and he has constant forward pressure. He does have a high output. He's also got fast hands, and he's got really long shots, so he can like blitz in on people really quickly. He's kind of your classic wrestle boxer that we used to see a lot several years ago. When he gets on the ground, he floats well on top. He stays heavy on his opponents and is able to flow well in that position. He does throw short punches and elbows when he's breaking a clinch on the feet, which is always something you like to see. Kind of roughs your opponents up one last little bit and scores on your way out of the clinch. He uses body locks well, especially up against the fence. He's got good intelligent submission defense, and he's a grinder. He finishes a lot of his fights late, actually. Before he got to the UFC, he's got like a 4th round TKO, a 3rd round TKO, a late 2nd round submission, a 5th round TKO. He just wears on these guys and he breaks them. And then at the end of the fight, when they've got nothing left to give, that's when he really pours it on and kicks it up a gear. Tony Gravely is a very impressive prospect, and I'm very much looking forward to what we see out of him. That being said, I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to stick to my angle of fading fighters who are stepping up in competition, who are stepping up under the limelight for the very first time and making their UFC debut. There's an adrenaline rush, there's an adrenaline dump, there's UFC jitters, you make mistakes, and you're also finding that new level of competition for the very first time. So even though he's not underexperienced, he's 19-5, so he's had plenty of experience. He's been caught in 4 submissions over the course of his career. It's not like he's not able to be submitted. Granted, one of those was to Patrick Mix, who is a complete badass over in Bellator, but Brett Johns is a guy that would be capable of doing something like that to him. And Brett Johns has the skill set and the experience of fighting guys who are literally in the top 5 of the division. He's knocking on the door. He is right there. This is not the middle of the division or the low end of the division that Tony is jumping into. He's arguably jumping into the deep end. And when you do that on your first fight, it doesn't end well very often. This is a line that I tweeted out early because I really wanted to snap up that value. We got Brett Johns at plus 105. If you tailed that with me, that's what I locked up as soon as I finished tape studying this one, and I thought, there's no way that's going to hold up. Now, to my dismay, there is some still plus money out there. It's mostly plus 100s across the board. There's a minus 110 out there, but I do see one or two plus 105s. I've got a feeling that that's going to disappear. I'm shocked it's still there at this point. I don't think it's going to be there for long. Something interesting that I want to make note of here before we move on to the next fight is that Brett Johns actually opened up at minus 215. So this is a spot where it's not exactly an angle, but when the bookmakers looked at this fight, they went, oh, damn, this dude needs to be a huge, decent-sized favorite, and we need to protect ourselves. They opened up at minus 215. Now, if you got some crazy plus money on Tony, props to you. I would have taken plus 150 on Tony or something like that too. That would be absolutely nuts. But the way that it's been bet down, when we're talking about just picking a winner, it's an even fight, or even laying something like minus 140 with a newcomer in the UFC like Tony, can't do it. I'm going to go ahead and side with the bookie here. I think Brett Johns should be favorite. Granted, I don't think he's a minus 215, but I do think that he's the favorite, and I do think he stands a very good chance of bouncing back and winning this fight. I know I said one last thing, but seriously, one last thing. The other thing is Brett Johns is only 27 years old. He is not quite at that 21, 22 range where it's like crazy leaps and bounds every time we see him disappear for a while, but he's been gone for a full year. He lost twice in 2018, and we did not see him in 2019. He didn't fight. So you've got to expect that he has been sharpening his tools and improving his game in that entire year that he's been gone. And in the UFC, you never want that 3-strike rule. You never want to be down 3 fights in a row. So even if he's fun and exciting and they might not actually fire him, you're never safe when you're on a 3-fight losing streak. A lot of people get cut as soon as they hit that 0-3. He's got to bounce back here, and that's another thing that I just like and think is going in his favor here. We'll take Brett Johns as a dog, plus 105, baby. Let's go. Our next fight is in the women's bantamweight division, where Sara McMann is taking on Lina, the elbow queen, Lansberg. Sara McMann is 11-5. She is 39 years old. Lina Lansberg, the elbow queen, is 37, and she is 10-4. This is a good matchup. The UFC matchmakers, I feel like, have been on a roll lately as far as the people that they're setting up, and the good reasons that they're setting up as well. Like their positions as far as where they're standing, whether or not they're coming off the Ultimate Fighter or Dana White's Contender Series, people that need to bounce back off a couple of losses and someone who they could potentially, make a name off of them. They've been killing it with this shit. I love it. So Sara, as you all most likely know, she's been around for freaking ever. She's a Olympic wrestling silver medalist, and that's always been the thing in her back pocket. She's in very good shape, physically strong. She hits hard. If she gets you on the mat, you're never safe. She's got a hell of a squeeze on her, and she has a serious ground and pound threat. She has smothering top control, and she always tries to get the crucifix. That's something that she goes for regularly and can do some serious damage on, or get a referee stoppage on, because you have a hard time getting out of there. She's so heavy on top control that there's just nothing you can do once she's up on your upper body like that, and you better be ready to block some elbows with your forehead. The one thing that she has trouble with is she does struggle when she's on her back. The people that have been able to actually reverse her and put her on her back, she's a fish out of water. She's the wrestler. She's the grinder. She needs to be on top. She needs to be in control. The second that she's not, it's a problem. Lina Lansberg, on the flip side of this thing, is on a 2-fight winning streak when compared to Sara's 2-fight losing streak. She was very active in 2019. She fought Tonya Evinger and Macy Chiesa, defeating both of them by decision, whereas Sara McMann, we haven't seen since 2018. She lost to Ketlin Vieira via submission in 2017. She lost to Marion Renault in 2018 via submission, and we haven't seen her since. Now, Lina gives up the takedown. That's the biggest thing that stood out to me here. Sara McMann is a wrestler. She's a silver medalist. She goes for the takedown. That's all she wants, and Lina gives up the takedown. She doesn't have much of a get-up game either. She was able to get up against Tonya Evinger, who shot, and she was able to get up against Macy Chiesa, who, even though she's young and strong, is green. She doesn't ever give up, though. And that's really the best thing about her, is that she will fight until the final bell every single damn time. She has strong top control, so when she manages to get on top, you're also pretty damn well fucked. And she looks for knees and elbows to reverse positions in the clinch. She's always trying to strike in those clinch situations. And really, I left myself a note here when I was breaking down this fight. Whoever gets on top wins. End of story. Whichever one of these girls is going to be able to inflict their will here on their opponent, and whichever one hits their back is going to lose. Whoever stays on top wins. End of story. This is an interesting fight to me. It looks like we had Sara McMann open up as a slight favorite. 54% of the money or bets have been made on Sara McMann, and she's been driven down to a minus 150, minus 155 favorite. The comeback right now, you could get Lina Lansberg at about plus 135. There's something I haven't told you about this fight yet, though. And that's that the reason we haven't seen Sara McMann is because she had a baby. Now, she took a year and a half off to give birth to her child, and she has gotten back in phenomenal shape. Check out her Instagram. Girl's got abs that I'm jealous of. I wish I could switch bodies with this 40-year-old woman, because holy shit. Now, she does have a great body, but something that I haven't talked about this year, obviously, because we only had one show, but some of you may remember from previous shows, is I fade moms. Now, don't start typing at me, ladies. I don't mean to offend. When it comes to fighting, when it comes to the sport of mixed martial arts, you have to be at your peak level. You have got to be dialed in, focused, 100% committed, and if you're not, you're dead. You're gonna lose. You can't compete at the top level. And especially against an opponent like Lina Lansberg, who just never stops coming forward and always gets in your face. When you have a baby, you become a mom, you're in mom mode, and you very, very much have a hard time getting out of that. Instead of caring for somebody day in and day out, you have a life that is dependent on you, and then you've got to shift gears and go into wanting to smash people's faces. It's not an easy transition. And I mean that in the best way possible. It's not an easy switch to flip, and a lot of women really struggle with it. It's not the same when you're a guy, when you have a baby and you can leave him home with mom knowing he's safe and sound and protected, and then go off and train and hurt somebody to bring home the bacon and the cash and the glory. It's different when you're the mom. You're the mom, you're taking care of the child more often than not, and you have to pass that baby off to somebody else. You're worried about it, you're thinking about it, your training isn't quite as sharp. You may not even want to be there because you want to be at home with your kid, and it's just a natural reaction that we have. And it's something that causes a problem when it comes to mixed martial artists. Now, some of them get it back. Don't get me wrong. Sara McMann is already a mom. She's got an older daughter. She's been there before, and that may factor into this. Some of them can get it back. But the very first time when you do have to step away, it's difficult. And because of that, I have found great success betting against women who are recently coming off of maternity leave. And I'm very, very interested in doing so here. Now, the thing is, I'm going to sit tight just a little bit. So this is a spot where Sara McMann is on a 2-fight losing streak, and you would think that this would be a bit of a bounce back spot for her, right? But again, she's 39. That's another angle of mine that I want to bet against a 39-year-old fighter. Lina Lansberg's 37, so it's not that big of a thing because I would take that angle with her also, but she's 2 years younger here, so she's going to be the bet on fighter with that don't bet on 40-year-olds angle. And the fact that Sara McMann is coming off of not one but 2 submission losses, she got finished both of those fights. I got to wonder about her motivation here before having her child. I got to wonder how much she had left in the tank before having a kid. And now that Lina Lansberg is riding hot, she's experienced, she's fought 2 high-level competitors in the last year. She's not going to have any ring rust. She's rolling. All of the motivation and aggression and momentum is on Lina Lansberg's side right now. And somehow Sara McMann is a minus 150 freaking favorite. I don't get it. The bookmakers opened up this thing opposite. Lina Lansberg was a minus 150 favorite. Sara McMann was a plus 120 dog. And it has been steady steamed all the way till the line has completely flipped and then some. I'm going to watch this line. I'm going to wait because I very well might bet on Lina Lansberg simply from my angle's perspective that if she is the meaner fighter and she has a tendency to defend her opponent's takedowns and then force them to quit later in the fights. Sara McMann has gotten caught in 2 fights back to back in the second round when she started to slow down a little bit. Now that she's got some ring rust, now that she's coming back from a long layoff, now that she's had another child, she's 39 years old. A lot of those fingers are pointing towards Lina Lansberg for me, and I think that we're going to get great value on this thing being a hairy split decision. And if she can get up around plus 150 or something, I will definitely be pulling that trigger. So I'm already leaning towards Lina Lansberg. She is my pick to win the fight. I'm not going to bet it just yet because I want to see if we get some better dog money on it. Follow me on Twitter at DieHardMMAPod. If I lock that bet in and make it official, you're going to find out then, and you're going to find out what the line is there. Our next fight is in the men's bantamweight division where Montel Jackson, 8-1-0, is taking on Felipe Colares, who is 9-1-0 himself. Montel is 27 years old, Felipe is 25, and both guys are relatively impressive and just getting the ball rolling here on their UFC careers. Montel Jackson is good basically everywhere. He knows how to use his height and reach to his advantage. He's calm, he's technical, he picks his shots. One thing I really like to see is he does rib roasters. Whenever he's got his opponents on the mat and he can tie them up, he just lays into their body. Like I said before, money in the bank. And Felipe on the flip side of this thing, he keeps his hands low. He's got sloppy transitions on the back. He does use things like, he's got good offensive grappling. He uses foot stomps. He's got good striking defense against the cage. When he does get on top, he's got good elbows. I mean, I'm going to save some time here. There's not a lot to talk about. Even though both of these guys only have 1 loss, even though Felipe's got an impressive record, this is a bad matchup for him, and I think he's going to sleep. Montel Jackson is a rightful minus 650, minus 700 favorite, and there's no betting value here for me. I'm not taking the shot on Felipe Colares. I think this is a spot for a highlight reel knockout by Montel Jackson. I think the UFC knows that, and as much as this seems like a prospect versus prospect spot, I think it's anything but that. Felipe lost his UFC debut versus Geraldo de Freitas, and then he barely squeaked by Domingo Pilarte. I think they are sacrificing him to Montel Jackson to blow his name up and get him some serious action. The pick is Montel Jackson. No way in hell am I touching this fight. I do want to see the totals when they drop. That would be the only angle that I might be able to have on this fight, but I don't think they're out for this card just yet. So, as always, keep an eye on my Twitter. If I have a bet on a total or something like that, I'll lock it in later when those things drop. Our next fight is another one that we can kind of save a little bit of time on. We've got a women's flyweight fight between Justine Kish and Lucie Pudilová. Justine Kish is 31 years old. She is 6-2. Lucie the Bullet Pudilová is 25 years old. She is 8-5. And I know someone who looks exactly like her. It's actually a little scary because every time her picture comes up, I'm like, oh, I know you. So this is a fight that I'm going to side with Lucie. I think Lucie wins this fight. Justine Kish is basically mid-tier. She's got basic striking, basic grappling. She's tough. She's not that great. Lucie Pudilová is 25 years old. She's tall. She's long. She's light on her feet. She does have strong hips. She's got decent offensive grappling. She does have good elbows in the clinch, and it looks like based on her Instagram that she's been training with Germaine Durandamy. She got kind of thrown into the deep end. She fought Irene Aldana, Liz Carmouche, and Antonina Shevchenko. She lost all 3 of those fights. Obviously, she really needs a win here, but I think she's clear and away the better fighter over Justine Kish. I'm not impressed with Justine Kish really at all. Now, she's coming off of a 2-fight losing streak herself to Felice Herrig and Ji Yoon Kim. Decent names there, but also, somehow she got a win over Nina Ansaroff back in 2016, and she also beat Randa Marcos back in 2014. This is a fight that I would suggest you stay clear away from. My pick is going to be Lucie Pudilová. There's no betting value there. She opened up at minus 155, which is already pretty wide for this particular fight, and money's coming in on her, so she's been driven up to about minus 170. There's no way I'm laying that kind of price on a fighter who's on a 3-fight losing streak, and of course, there's no way I'm betting on Justine Kish because I don't think she can win this fight. I just don't think that she's got the tools to do it. Not only that, she's the older fighter in this situation. I'm expecting Lucie Pudilová to show improvements. I'm staying clear and away from this one. The only way I'm betting this fight is when I do my $1 entire fight pick, when I pick every single fight on the card and pray that it comes in. I will put Lucie Pudilová in the Hail Mary parlay. Our next fight is at featherweight, where Arnold Almighty Allen is taking on Nick the Carney Lentz, and this is a fun one. So first off, this fight's a little wild because Arnold was scheduled to fight my boy Josh Emmett, and that was a hell of a fight. I was very much looking forward to that one, and I was very, very close to taking Josh Emmett as a dog. Now, granted, I hadn't finished my tape study on it, and Arnold Allen is not the kind of kid that you want to step in front of, but I'm also very high on Josh Emmett. I like his skill set, so that would have been a banger. Well, Josh Emmett, unfortunately, has to pull out due to injury. Nick Lentz has the exact same thing happen, so the UFC just stuck these two together, and now we've got a fight. So, Arnold Allen, 15-1-0. This kid is a very talented, very young 26, training out of TriStar. Nick Lentz, on the flip side of this thing, is the aged and withered veteran. He's 35 years old. He's got 30 wins and 10 losses, 40 fights under his belt. He is extremely experienced, and we've got this is a really weird stylistic matchup because it's not one that they planned. So Arnold Allen, he's got good footwork. One thing I like about him is he finds his range very, very quickly. He's very measured, and he manages distance really well. He's very hard to hit, and he comes in with fast counters. He has a solid killer instinct. When he gets his opponent hurt, he flurries all over them, and I love that. He puts people away late because of that ability. He also is kind of a point fighter. I mean, he reminds me a bit of Colby Covington in the way that he strikes, where he's just constantly using maybe 60% of his power. It's never, sitting on the punch, throwing 90 or 100%, trying to take the guy's head off. He will just pepper you with mid-level shots over and over and over, and they just add up and demoralize his opponents. It's a really fun style to watch because he just kind of picks people apart. Now, Nick Lentz is dropping back down to 145 after his recent foray back up at 155. He got TKO'd by Charles Oliveira in the second round. If memory serves, we were all over that one. He has good offensive wrestling, and he's got good cage control. He is good at controlling his opponents when he gets on their back. He can backpack people, and he's got a solid chain grappling skill set. But beyond that, he doesn't have a whole lot to speak of. He did have a KO in 2018. However, that was over the chinless and defenseless Gray Maynard, who he basically just buried after a long and painful career. This is a fight that I think the line says everything. I don't know how Nick Lentz wins this fight. It's a passing of the torch. Arnold Allen is damn near 10 years younger than Nick Lentz. He's got better skill sets everywhere. He's going to have the height and reach advantage. He'll have a speed and power advantage as well. I mean, Nick Lentz might be able to have a ground advantage on him, but I don't know if he'll even be able to get Arnold to the ground. Now, the books all haven't opened up a line on this one. It looks like Arnold is sitting at about minus 275, minus 280. When the lines did open, money immediately came in on him, and I think he's going to close around minus 350. I think it's justified. I think he's going to have an easy night here with Nick. Nick is also coming off of that KO loss. Now, it was back in May of 2019, so he's taken an appropriate amount of time off to heal. But if a guy like Charles Oliveira can KO you and that's your last loss, you got to start wondering about the durability slipping here. He's only been KO'd 3 times in his entire career, but like I said, he's 35 years old, so he's kind of headed towards the end, and this is the type of opponent that's going to be able to step in and just straight up get it done. I got to wonder if Arnold Allen isn't a decent price inside the distance. Arnold Allen inside the distance is plus 290. They're saying that Arnold Allen is not going to finish Nick Lentz. This is a kid with 15 wins. He's got 5 KOs, 4 submissions, and only 6 of his fights have gone to decision. Now, granted, he just fought Gilbert Melendez. He pieced him apart. That was his first real big step up in competition. And he hasn't finished a whole lot of people at the UFC level. He does have 2 submissions over Mads Burnell and Alan Omer, so most of those finishes have come on the regional scene. But we've talked about this before. These kids, they kill everybody on the regional scene because they are just that next level of talent, and you can't combat them on the regional scene. They get to the UFC, and it's a bit slow going. They have a hard time getting the engine moving because you're fighting at a higher level. These guys are way tougher and way harder to beat, but then they start to put it all together. Then it starts to connect. He's at a good gym. He's at TriStar. They're going to have a game plan, and he's fighting an old and withered Nick Lentz, and an old withered Nick Lentz that is somebody who has been susceptible to being finished over the last little bit here. I am very, very interested in that plus 290. Wow, that's juicy. Nick Lentz got TKO'd by Evan Dunham back in 2012. I mean, his two losses to Charles Oliveira were his last two finish losses, so I guess nobody else has really been able to finish him. But take a look at his record. I mean, he fought Manny Gamburian, he fought Danny Castillo, Will Brooks, Gray Maynard, Scott Holtzman. I mean, he isn't really fighting prolific finishers. I'm gonna have to sit on that one. I do apologize. I know this isn't the most fascinating podcast material here for you, but I literally just clicked open the prop bets on this one, and I was not expecting to see a plus 290 next to Allen inside the distance. Rather than laying 3-1 on him, we might have to risk the 1 unit to get him at plus 290 inside the distance, because I could smell a finish on this one. I'll get back to you on that one. I'm going to think about that. I didn't intend to handicap putting a bet on Arnold Allen for this one. I wouldn't mind him in parlays, though. I think that's a good way to bet him if you've got another favorite or something like that you like on the card. I do think he wins this fight running away. So even if it is a dominant 15-round decision, you can bring that price down with another favorite on the card, be able to get you just a little bit less than even money if they're in the minus 250 or so range. That's how we're looking, folks. We're going to pass for now. The pick is definitely Arnold Allen, and a bet might come a little bit later. We'll see. Our next fight moves up to the middleweight division, where Bevon, the extraordinary gentleman Lewis, takes on Dequan, the tarantula Townsend. And I can't stand this guy because his name is Tarantula. I hate it. I can't stand spiders. So Bevon Lewis is 6-2-0. He's another one of these guys coming off the Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. He's on a 2-0 skid, and he is taking on Dequan Townsend, who is coming off a loss himself. Now, granted, Dequan was brought in to fight Dalcha Lugiambula back in June of 2019, and he took that fight up at 205. He's a middleweight. This guy should be fighting at 185, and it looks like he's got a history of even fighting as low as 170 at one point, but he takes a fight at 205 to get in the UFC, takes his beating. Lucie TKOs him in the third round. I mean, it was a bit of an early stoppage. He seems to have a decent chin on him. I mean, I don't want to say early stoppage, but he wasn't out, you know what I mean? I don't think he was getting out of that position. I think he was taking damage. The ref did the right thing, but it's not like he got severed from his consciousness. Now, Bevon Lewis is just a huge favorite in this spot, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. So he opens up at minus 300. He gets bet all the way up to minus 420, minus 150, somewhere in that crazy range, and he has constant pressure, very creative striking, excellent knees from the clinch. That's something that I love to see. He can slap the clinch on his opponents, get in that Muay Thai plum, and then fire off knees really quick. He's a fast starter. That's something right out of the gates you've got to watch out for him. He's dangerous. He mixes kicks well in. He does front kicks and side kicks, leg kicks, very good rage control, good cage pressure when he gets his opponents up against the fence. I mean, Bevon Lewis really has everything, and he's been a favorite in his last couple of fights, and I want to say that we maybe appropriately faded him in both of them, ? I can't remember on the second one. In December of 2018, we hit Uriah Hall hard, and everyone told me that that was just a terrible bet. I mean, people were making fun of me. People online were giving me shit, and Uriah Hall knocks him out in the third round. That was fun. Now, then he comes back and he faces Darren Stewart, the dentist, who is another guy who I'm a huge fan of, and we have recently bet. I can't remember if we actually took Darren Stewart against Bevon Lewis or not, but that's when Darren Stewart really started to turn things around, and he came out on top in that fight. It was an impressive match, and Bevon Lewis finds himself 0-2. Again, you don't ever want to be 0-3, and he might just be one of these kids that's severely talented. He's got it all going for him and just can't quite put it together. I'm not sure. I mean, he got caught against Uriah Hall, but he got dominated versus Darren Stewart. We know now, something that we've always believed, as far as I'm concerned here on the podcast, that Darren Stewart is a talent. He was a guy that struggled to put it all together, and now he has. So Bevon Lewis was on the wrong side of that freight train. Dequan, we don't know if this guy's even UFC caliber at this point, unfortunately. He's 33 years old. He's 21-9 If I recall correctly, he got busted for having cocaine or something like that, partying a little too hard outside the octagon. He is long, he's tall, he's got decent head movement, but he does kind of have the tall man defense where he just expects to be able to lean back and get out of the way. He struggles to get off of his back. If you can put him on the mat, he has no answer, no get-up game. So you got to wonder if Bevon Lewis isn't just looking to come in here and grind him out. I don't know if he's going to be able to get a finish, which, of course, Bevon Lewis is the kind of guy that is always looking for that finish. He's got 3 knockouts on his record. He's always looking with those fancy strikes to land something big, but this fight, it's another one that unfortunately we just have to pass. I mean, the pick is Bevon Lewis, but I can't trust this guy. He's on an 0-2 run right now, and even though he's at Jackson Winks MMA, he's at a good camp, he's got all the skills in the world that you would want to see, he just seems to have a problem right now, and Dequan is a bit of a wild card. He's a big dude, he's long, he's rangy, he's got a decent set of skills, he's got a lot of finishes, but like I said, he just may very well not be UFC caliber, and he's a bit older himself, so complete stay away in my opinion. The pick is Bevon Lewis, but no betting action here whatsoever for me. We're staying with the big boys where Jamahal Sweet Dreams Hill is taking on Darko Stošić, and this is a fun fight. So Jamahal Hill is another one of these kids who's coming off of the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. He's got really good movement. He's 6-0. He's got this nice wide and low karate stance. He's got big, thick, heavy legs, and he's got really strong kicks. He works the body with those things, and he is so fast when he fires off these body kicks. He really doesn't load up. When you see people like wind up for a big shot, he just doesn't do that. It's almost like Machida, where he's so relaxed and he comes out of nowhere with a big, hard shot. It's like a baseball bat when he hits people in the ribs with this thing. I love that body kick. He finds his range well and very early. He does have very good timing, and he has excellent clinch knees to the body. He's another one kind of like Bevon Lewis that'll find that clinch and that plum very early, fire off a couple knees, and then break and get out. He's 6-0, 3 of those wins by KO, and he's coming off a fantastic knockout on the Contender Series. His amateur record is 11-0-2. 10 of those 11 wins on the amateur scene were by KO as well. So even though this is a guy that looks like he doesn't have a whole lot of experience, you tack those 11 fights on top of it, and he's got 17 fights. For a prospect, that's not bad at all. That's the kind of experience you're wanting somebody to have. He's only 28 years old, so he's not quite at his prime yet, and I don't know what his gym affiliation is. I can't seem to find that anywhere. I think he trains out of a small gym, which is a little concerning. He might be a big fish in a small pond, and he's taking on Darko Stošić, a guy who has burned us since he's been in the cage. He's now training with Curtis Blaydes, I found out, however, though, which is massively enlightening. They've also got this really cool promo of him training with, what's his face? He's training with Drew Dober, that's who it was. So he's doing some like cardio conditioning work and stuff like that with Drew Dober, really looking like they're pushing each other there, so that was fun. And if he's stepping up to a big, huge camp and he's training with a heavyweight contender, a guy like Curtis Blaydes, you've got to expect him to improve. He's 27 years old, so he's kind of in that same boat of being young enough to improve and seeing, leaps in his abilities. He fought at heavyweight before he came to the UFC and then dropped down to 205 pounds. He does seem to be a bit slow and plodding. He throws big looping counter hooks that are really strong. When he gets his opponents on the ground, he has monstrous ground and pound. He can end a fight in a hurry. And he also has a very good leg kick game, something that he used against Kennedy Njoku in his last fight. And I think it's something that we're actually going to see a lot here. That fight with Kennedy, stylistically speaking, physically speaking, Jamahal and Kennedy are very on par. I think Darko's going to come in with a very similar game plan. He's got a really good overhand right. He times it well. He can loop it big or loop it short, and it's a very strong weapon for him. He's got great timing on his takedown attempts. Sorry about that. And he does tend to gas out a little bit at the end of round 2. That was something that seemed to be a bit of a problem in his last couple of fights. Again, though, he's apparently stepped up his gym and stepped up his conditioning program. I gotta wonder if maybe that's something that he hasn't plugged up. He also has excellent use of dick kicks. If anybody watched the Kennedy Njoku fight, oh dear God, he landed 3 of the hardest cup kicks I think we've ever seen in the octagon. They took a point from him in round 2 after he landed like the second or third one, and then he just drills poor Kennedy with a third one late in the third round. And I mean, Kennedy is like crawling back to his corner as the crowd is groaning because they're showing the replay of another cup check by Darko Stošić, and he's like just slumping his head in shame after landing the last one. We bet Darko Stošić in that fight, and I was honestly laughing my face off because how else, like, I mean, he lost 2 points. He had 2 points taken away from him for dick kicks. I mean, there was no way in hell that we were winning that fight, and I couldn't help but laugh. And I forgot all about that until I went back and rewatched the tape, and it was all freshly funny to me yet again. This is a spot where I want to take my angle of fading the new kid. I mean, Darko Stošić got in against Jimmy Kimball and TKO'd him with a quickness in round 1. However, Kimball may not be UFC caliber. He had a very short run. He went 1-3. But Darko has only fought guys who have, I mean, decent upside. So, I mean, Devin Clark, they were very, very similar in my opinion. I think we were on Darko in that fight as well because I've got a severe dislike of Devin Brown Bear Clark for some reason. I don't like his skill set or what he brings to the table, and it seems like he's a Cowboy Cerrone type for me where I just can't seem to figure this dude out when it comes to betting. When I bet on him, he loses. When I bet against him, he wins, and that's kind of how that fight went for us. Looking back on it, Devin Clark and Darko match up relatively well stylistically speaking, and it probably just should have been a pass because they're very, very similar. Now, the Kennedy fight, again, I bet on Darko because I kind of wanted to take a shot at fading Kennedy, thinking he might not be able to stuff the takedowns, and I have a similar feeling here. The one fight that I really saw Jamahal Hill in where it even touched the ground out of his 6 professional fights was against William Vincent in February of 2019. He went for a full 5 minutes with that guy, and it was for a title, I want to say, Lights Out Championship 2. He got his back taken. He gave up his back really, really easy, and William just kind of gassed out. He didn't have anything left to give, so when he finally got into a dominant position after Jamahal beating his face up, Jamahal didn't have much to offer, and he just kind of slumped off of his back. It was one of those ones where the dude completely gassed out. He had nothing left. He went for a choke. When he didn't get it, he just kind of gave up. And if Jamahal was able to give up a takedown or a reversal to that kind of a guy, a dude with the physical prowess of Darko Stošić, a dude that has the takedown ability of Darko Stošić is going to be able to land those takedown shots. I also think that Darko will be able to chip away at the legs of Jamahal. However, Darko may be a sitting duck for the legs and the rapid fire shots of Jamahal Hill. So, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I think Darko can catch a couple of leg kicks and maybe put Jamahal on the mat. If he does, Darko may damn well be able to end this thing. The only problem is I'm truly terrified of betting Darko Stošić again and losing money because I just can't seem to bet him at the right time. Coming off of 2 losses, though, and then stepping up your training with a potential future champion, moving gyms, this is all good stuff to me. This is all very, very good stuff to me. Now, it looks like Darko opened up as a bit of a heavier dog, and we have a reverse line movement situation here. 56% of the tickets have been bet on Jamahal Hill, and that line is coming down. The money that matters is actually coming in on Darko Stošić. He's gone from a plus 120 favorite down to about even money. He's all the way down to even money and plus 105 in some places. Holy shit. So somebody else is seeing exactly what I am seeing, and I'm gonna have to do it. Damn it. One last time, I'm going to bet on Darko Stošić. I can't believe I'm saying this. So, Darko, this is your chance, buddy. This is your chance to prove to me what you've got. This is your chance to have what's left in the tank be shown, show the world that you're actually capable of being in the UFC and fighting against the UFC caliber opponent. Please don't let me down and cost me money. I can't believe I'm doing this. This is a spot where you have to try and time your fighter. We've failed at that a couple of times before, but this is the spot where if Darko's ever going to show up, it's now. And I'm just trying to get some of my money back on him. So we've got plus 115. We can lock that up right now. I will take it because apparently that line is going to disappear very, very quickly. And I want it. So lock up another dog shot. We're taking plus 115 on Darko Stošić. We're hoping that he can smother Jamahal on the mat and wrestle with this kid like no one's been able to do with him before. Use those leg kicks to slow him down. And maybe Curtis Blaydes can teach Darko a thing or two. And I am not even opposed to him getting a couple of dick kicks mixed in there so we can get this win. Our next fight is a women's straw weight tilt between Hannah Cifers, 10-3-0, taking on Angela Overkill Hill, who is 10-7. Hannah Cifers, Shockwave, is just recently been promoted to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So congratulations, Hannah. That is a massive achievement. Now, she comes in here. She's got really fast hands. And for the strawweight division, she hits really hard. She tends to wade in on her opponents and just kind of walk straight into range before she starts firing. She doubles up on these big looping hooks where she'll go left, right. I mean, kind of almost like John freaking Lineker. And she works the body. Again, that's a very important point. I love seeing fighters do that. She finishes combos with kicks, and it's always punches and bunches with her, which I love to see. It's never just one shot, one shot, one shot. She's landing 3, 4, 5 punch combos. Good sub defense, good ground and pound. She's way stronger than she looks, so she's a little beast. When she gets in there, she is surprisingly strong, and she has heavy counter punches with very good timing. She reads her opponents well, and she has really good hips, and really good takedown defense. All of that stuff, she is highly underrated in my opinion. I mean, since she's gotten to the UFC, I know it's only been a 3-fight run, but she's only lost to Macy Barber, and she was on a 5-fight win streak before that. This chick has 5 KOs in a 10-fight women's career. She hits really hard. Now, at the UFC level, again, that's not necessarily going to manifest because she's fighting much more experienced fighters, but if you're winning by TKO in the women's division, that's saying something. Now, Angela Hill on the flip side of this thing, she's a really fun personality to have. She's almost like Roxanne Modafferi, where she does like cosplay and Black Panther and stuff like that at, all the weigh-ins. She's really entertaining and fun to listen to. She's got really good footwork. She's fast. She controls the range really well. She's light on her feet. In this fight, she's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage, and she has strong step-in knees. If you watch her drilling those things, I would not want to take one of those to the gut. Now, she is very hittable. As much as I said that she controls the range really well, she kind of keeps her hands low and doesn't really parry all that well. She's open to be countered. She does hit with some slicing elbows, which actually we saw in her last fight against Ariane Carnelossi back in September. She actually got a 3rd-round TKO doctor stoppage because she landed a great Tony Ferguson-esque elbow right over the eyebrow and opened her up like a can. Now, the thing that has me concerned here is, first off, she seems like a very public play. I know everybody was on her when she fought Jodie Esquibel back in 2019, and everyone was willing to lay 4 or 5 to 1 because it was just such a one-sided fight. And now it seems like we have a bit of that again. She's minus 170 right now. She opened up at minus 165, and money's coming in. I see her minus 180 in some spots. Hannah Cifers is a decent-sized dog. She's plus 135, plus 140. I even see a plus 155. I think that's way too wide. Hannah Cifers, our girl Shockwave, she's another one of these underrated women's fighters, and she's not that physically overmatched by Angela Hill. You would think Angela would have more of a height and reach advantage, and that would make a huge difference, but it's not that big of a difference. Hannah Cifers is going to be the one that hits harder. The fact that she fights in combinations, I really like. I think that's going to be something that Angela struggles with. Angela kind of wilted a bit under the combinations of Yon and Zan, which I know Yan is a completely different level. She's better than Hannah Cifers, so don't feel like I'm comparing them too closely, but the game plan is there. The other thing I want to mention is that, of course, I do all of my creepy Instagram, Facebook, Twitter stalking of these fighters to get an idea of where they've been training, who they've been training with, what kind of shape they're in. And I'll be honest with you guys, I don't think Angela Hill is in the best place right now. She just seems... she's not nearly as tight as she usually is. You see her pictures and you see what she's been working on and stuff like that, and she just seems kind of out of shape to me. I do think this is a bit of a late step-in type of fight. I don't know that this is one that got planned or locked up like way in advance, so maybe that's part of it. Maybe she's actually taking kind of a later fight so she's not in fight shape, or maybe she's sick. Maybe she didn't take this camp seriously. I'm not sure, but I'm used to seeing a crisp, tight body with Angela Overkill Hill, especially when she's in training camp. And it's not quite there this time. She's a little bit flabby compared to where we usually see her. Now, there's still a little bit of time before fight time. Maybe it's an old picture. We can't put too much stock into that. But if she's at all underrating Hannah, or if she's at all compromised or not in the kind of shape that she should be in, I mean, Angela Hill, I don't bet on her more often than not, simply because she has a tendency to fight very, very closely with her opponents. She's always going to decisions. It's always close, tight, and hairy, and you feel like you could make an argument for her opponent in these fights. She barely outstrikes her opponent on average, whereas Hannah, unfortunately, she has been outstruck by her opponents, but she's fought Jodie Escobar, Poliana Viana, and Macy Barber. She's had a tough run of her first couple fighters. No cakewalk since she has gotten into the UFC. I think this is very close, and I'm honestly very, very tempted to bet on Hannah Cifers. This is another one where I'm going to see where that line goes, because I think there's a decent shot that Hannah can pull off a split decision here, and if that line gets too much wider, I'm going to be forced to take a shot. I'll be even bold enough to predict and say that Hannah Cifers is going to win this fight. She's my pick here. All right, our next fight is at men's flyweight, where Jordan Espinosa, 14-6-0, is taking on Alex Perez, who is 22-5. Y'all better buckle up for this one. So Jordan Espinosa, he's fast, he's light on his feet, he keeps his hands low, and he really relies on his speed. He blitzes in, blitzes out, he's constantly moving, he makes good use of feints, he has very, very fast level changes, and he just never slows down. It's something that his opponents tend to struggle with. Now, his last fight, he fought Matt Danger Schnell, and y'all know how much I love Matt Schnell. I think he's got the skill set of a title challenger, if maybe not the chin of a title challenger. He has got everything, and unfortunately, Jordan Espinosa bounced straight on into a triangle choke. He got in too deep. He wasn't able to get out of it, but we know how slick and dangerous Matt Schnell is. I think that may have just been a bit of a rough mistake. So this kid comes off Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. He beats Eric Shelton when he makes his UFC debut, and then they throw him to Matt Schnell, which most people may not think he's as high as I do. I think he really belongs high up the chain, and Jordan drops and lost to a guy like Matt Schnell. I don't really think that's anything to be overly concerned with. He's got all the skills and the physical athleticism to be able to make a run in this division. Alex Perez, on the flip side of this thing, he's 27 years old, 22-5, and he is moving back down to 125 for the first time after having a brief foray up at 135. He lost to Joseph Benavidez via big brothering. I mean, Joseph basically just kind of ragdolled him down when he got him on the mat, pounded his head in until the ref came over to stop him. And it was kind of crazy, actually. The ref comes over to stop the fight and then sees that Alex can kind of like lift his head up on his own, so he's not completely out yet, and then doesn't stop the fight. Poor Joseph Benavidez almost was put in a bad position as far as Alex got a takedown on him because the ref stepped in to stop him. Joe was like pulling off to give his opponent some space because he thought the fight was over, and then the ref kind of waved him on, the fight's not over, the fight's not over. I mean, really kind of fucked up. I didn't realize that had happened. So Alex Perez gets a second shot there. Joe Big Brothers his ass again, puts him face down on the mat, and continues to pound him out until the referee stops it for real this time. I mean, complete, utter dominance by Joseph Benavidez. Now, I know Joseph is currently going to be fighting for the title, so that's like the top tier of 125, but still, that was kind of embarrassing to be given a shot like that and then just get rickrolled right afterwards. He also fought Eric Shelton. That was in 2018. He also defeated him by a unanimous decision. He KO'd Jose Shorty Torres, who's no longer with the UFC. His other win, Carlos John de Thomas, he's a guy who's on a 2-fight losing streak that we haven't seen since, so he may also not be in the UFC. And then his recent win was against Mark De La Rosa, who, even though I thought he had a decent chance, I've come to realize that he's kind of a can and may not be UFC caliber. So really, the only win that I would give him any kind of real credit for was against Jose Torres, or the Eric Shelton win, which he shares with Jordan Espinosa. Now, he does have good forward pressure. He does attack with front kicks. He kind of flings those out at his opponents. Not something I think he's going to be able to hit Jordan Espinosa with unless he times it perfectly when he's like blitzing in. One thing I noticed about Alex that I really don't like is that he moves straight backwards and he shells up. He does cover up completely. He has no form of offense or defense. He just hopes he'll stop. And then he overextends on his punches. When he comes back the other direction, he leaves his chin open. You can counter him with short, quick shots. And he does cut the cage off well. That's something that I find in his favor. He's got good, solid, active ground and pound. But really, when you look at these two guys, statistically speaking, they have nearly identical numbers. Now, Jordan Espinosa's new in the UFC. His fight against Schnell was very, very short, so there's not a whole lot of numbers that you can get from that. But their common opponent of Eric Shelton, they have essentially identical numbers when fighting this guy, okay? Now, Jordan Espinosa is going to have a 4-inch reach advantage, and he is by far the more athletic of the two fighters. He's going to have a speed advantage. He's going to have a range advantage, and I think he's got better movement. And I'm looking at this line going, why is he a plus 200 dog? I don't understand. So this is a spot where 65% of the money has come in on Alex Perez. He opened up minus 240, and now he's being driven all the way up to minus 275. We can get Jordan Espinosa at plus 235, and this is a one-unit line shot. I have to take this line because I simply don't understand it. Jordan Espinosa and Alex Perez should be similar in their line value. I think that this line should be a whole lot shorter, and I know the money is telling me that I'm wrong, but for me, I simply don't understand why. I see advantages for Jordan Espinosa. I think this is going to be a very scrappy fight. I don't think that Alex Perez is going to be able to KO Jordan Espinosa. He's never been KO'd in his career. Alex Perez has been KO'd. Granted, it was to Joseph Benavidez, but of the two of them, he's the one that's been knocked out. Jordan Espinosa has a good ground game. He's got well-timed takedowns. In fact, I think he might be the one that gets on top in this fight. And if that happens, I mean, he might be able to get a submission or a ground and pound win over Alex Perez. I'm going to take a flyer in the dark here. I'm hoping that we are up by this point in the fight because I don't want to be preying on Jordan Espinosa winning to save our night. But I just think that that line is nuts. So I'm going to go ahead and lock up the plus 235 on Jordan Espinosa because it doesn't make sense. I have to. The pick is Jordan Espinosa to win the fight. I'm going to bet Jordan Espinosa as a huge underdog. And let's just cross our fingers we hit one of these darts that we're tossing here. For our co-main event of the evening, we've got a welterweight fight with Rafael dos Anjos, the former 155-pound champion, taking on Michael Chiesa, the Maverick. And Rafael dos Anjos is 30-12. He is only 35 years old. Somehow this guy isn't close to 40 yet or knocking on that door. Seems like he's been around for freaking ever. But he's only 35 years old. Chiesa on the other side of this thing is 32, and he kind of feels a bit like a busted prospect. He was supposed to be the next big thing, kind of like Kevin Lee back at 155, and then we just realized he's way too big for the division, and he kind of laid a couple of eggs. So this fight is very, very intriguing to me, and I've heard some very interesting takes out there on this fight. We all know what Rafael dos Anjos is. I have been able to break this guy down forward and backward for the last little bit. We absolutely smashed that bet on him against Kevin Lee in May of 2019 when he won by arm triangle in the fourth because you simply can't wrestle this guy. The only people that can wrestle this guy and handle this guy when it comes to a pace and cardio are the top three. His losses are to Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, and Leon Edwards. These are men who outsize him and outskill him when it comes to wrestling. You have to have the combination of both if you hope to stifle the striking game of Rafael dos Anjos. If you cannot outgrapple this guy, he has a better gas tank than anybody. He has better striking prowess, better ground and pound, sick Muay Thai. He will beat you to a pulp if you can't out-grapple him for 25 straight minutes. So Michael Chiesa on the other side of this thing, again, like I said, a busted 155-pound prospect. He moves up to 170. Okay, so he's on a two-fight skid after getting subbed out by Kevin Lee and Anthony Pettis. 2018, he faces Carlos Condit. He gets one of the most awkward submissions with a Kimura one-handed against Carlos Condit that I've ever seen. Incredibly impressive, broke my heart because I'm a huge fan of Carlos Condit, and that sucked to see him go out that way, but very creative and impressive by Michael Chiesa. However, Carlos Condit hasn't been relevant in years. He hasn't been around in years. He came off of a massive layoff, ring rust. He was bad when he left. He's on a 5-fight losing streak. Okay, so you beat that guy. You're a young, current talent. Fine. That makes sense. And then he takes on, guess who? Diego Sanchez. That was one of the biggest bets I've made. That was one of the easiest free money bets that there has ever been in my life when we bet Michael Chiesa in a parlay with Amanda Nunes to beat Diego Sanchez. It was so easy. Diego Sanchez, again, is completely shot. The dude's 38-year-old. He has no chin. Yes, he does have his iron will. Yes, he does have his wrestling, but he's completely undersized for 170, and really, that's all he's got. That's not Rafael dos Anjos, folks. So I keep hearing these people with these hot takes of, well, I think Michael Chiesa's live here, and I just don't see it. I think we've seen him get 2 wins over 2 guys that realistically shouldn't be fighting anymore. Rafael dos Anjos, now I know you can say, okay, well, Diego was a title challenger and Carlos was a former champion. Yes, that's true, but again, neither of them have been relevant in years. Rafael dos Anjos has been nothing but fighting the meat grinder of the top 3 fighters in the 170-pound division. After moving from 155 to 170, he made an amazing transition. He stacked on muscle, and he is just as dangerous at 170 as he was at 55. Now, his power didn't quite translate. He doesn't have that one-hitter, quitter, knockout power like he used to have at 170, but he still has his gas tank. He still has his volume. He's still incredibly strong, and if you're not one of these top 4 or 5 fighters, you're simply not going to beat him. I see a lot of people saying that Michael Chiesa is going to be able to just out-muscle Rafael dos Anjos, and I don't see it. I don't think he has the offensive wrestling game to get it done. He's got the jiu-jitsu skills to get it done. Don't get me wrong. He's got sick jiu-jitsu and he can sub just about anybody, but you've got to get in the right position to do so. And if you can't out-wrestle Rafael dos Anjos, if you can't get RDA to the mat in a dominant position, you're not going to sub this guy. Rafael dos Anjos has never lost by submission, and he's fought some serious talent names. Guys back in the day when they were in their primes like Tony Ferguson, Eddie Alvarez, Donald Cerrone, Anthony Pettis, Nate Diaz, Ben Henderson, Khabib. I mean, he's fought them all, and no one was able to sub this guy. Neil Magny most recently. Like I said, Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington. I know those guys are more wrestlers than they are submission threats, but they were only able to get 5-round decisions off of him. They were not able to put him down. They were not able to slow him down, and he had his moments in all of those fights. I think that Rafael dos Anjos is a easy pick here. Now, I know that's bad juju to say it's an easy pick. I'm not saying mortgage your house and put your life savings on Rafael dos Anjos, but I'm putting him in a parlay, a 2-unit parlay, because I think he runs away with this one. I think he makes Michael Chiesa stand with him, and if it doesn't go to the ground, we're in RDA's world. RDA is miles better of a striker than Michael Chiesa. Chiesa's awkward, even though he's going to have a striking reach advantage. He doesn't know how to use it. He doesn't have very good boxing. He doesn't have very good Muay Thai. And unless he shows up to this thing after spending months in Tiger Muay Thai that I'm just not aware of, he's not going to be able to hang with Rafael dos Anjos on the feet. I think RDA wins a convincing 15-minute 3-round decision here. Now we're on to the main event where we head to the biggest of the boys. We're going to the heavyweight division where standout Curtis Razor Blaydes, 12-2, 28 years old, is taking on the former champion Junior Dos Santos Cigano, who's 21-6, 35 years of age. This is one hell of a fun fight. Now, the other thing is, I'm just going to tell you all straight out, we are closing that parlay with Curtis freaking Razor Blaydes. When I made that parlay, I got it at -107. That's what it came out to. And depending on where your lines are getting made at, you may get a little bit better than that actually at this point. I think some money has come in on Junior Dos Santos to move that line just a hair. This is a 2-unit parlay, folks. I am risking 2.14 units to win 2 units. I am hitting this parlay twice because I think that it has just got that much of an opportunity to cash. I think this is a great spot to parlay these two together and just run away with it. So Curtis Razor Blaydes has only lost twice. If you erase Francis Ngannou from existence, Curtis Blaydes is undefeated and may even be the heavyweight champion at this point. He is unreal. real. Trains out of Elevation Fight Team. His gas tank at heavyweight is something that we have maybe never seen before. He reminds me of young Cain Velasquez, C-level Cain. No, that's the bad Cain. He reminds me of the Cain before he took all of that damage. Curtis just doesn't stop. He puts a pace on people, he double legs your ass, he ankle picks you, dumps you, and then you get TKO'd on the mat. If you look at this dude's resume, Alexei Olenek, who we love, Mark Hunt, Alistair Overeem, Justin Wellis, and then Shamil Abdurakhimov. I mean, he peaked at guys like Mark Hunt and Alistair Overeem. Then he ran into Francis Ngannou, had to take a bit of a step back, which a kid like this can only grow from. Now, the TKO to Francis Ngannou, I mean, Francis punches like nobody on the planet. You can't compare any puncher to Francis Ngannou, and he's the only guy who's been able to put Curtis Blaydes down, and I actually think it may have been a bit of a quick stoppage. Now, again, this is one of those ones where if you don't stop Francis Ngannou, he's just gonna keep killing your brain cells, so I'm okay with the referee stopping the fight the way that he did, but it was probably very early. Curtis has a very good chin. He got wobbled, he got knocked down, but he wasn't out. So again, it wasn't one of those ones where you're like, oh, his brain's rattled, his chin is gone, he's been knocked out by Francis twice. It's not that bad. Junior Dos Santos, on the flip side of this thing, he's had a rough go of it. So he gets knocked out by Alistair Overeem, bounces back against Big Ben Rothwell. He gets knocked out by Stipe Miocic. Somehow he's put together a 3-fight win streak against Blagoy Ivanov, Tai Tuivasa, and Derek Lewis. The Tai Tuivasa fight, he was getting his ass whipped in that fight, and that was one that we almost cashed. We were on Tai Tuivasa for that one, and then Junior basically just showed his veteran savvy, found a way to do it, got Tai feeling uncomfortable, and then TKO'd him in round 2. Derek, the Black Beast Lewis, that was another one that we bet on the Black Beast. I've had a hard time fading Junior recently, unfortunately, and Derek Lewis got put out in the second round as well. Junior still got that power. Don't get me wrong. He's still an excellent boxer. He can time counters and things like that, but he is notably slower than he used to be. He got blasted by Francis Ngannou in June last year, and we cashed in on that one as well because, again, anytime Francis steps in that cage, he is worth taking the shot on. I don't care what the odds are because he can KO a freaking elephant if he wants to. So coming off of that loss, that was back in June of 2019. So he has taken, I'd say, roughly the appropriate amount of time. He's taken about 9 months after that knockout to repair, to recover, so his chin probably isn't deteriorated that bad. However, these are men's heavyweight. He's been knocked out 4 times, and he's 35 years old. This is kind of a Donald Cerrone type of situation. He got into a battle with Blagoy Ivanov after getting knocked out by Stipe. He got into a war with Tai Tuivasa and took some serious damage, and he didn't get roughed up that bad in the Derek Lewis fight, but then he gets knocked out clean by Francis Ngannou. You've got to wonder what Junior has left. And again, just like the last fight, this is a fist fight. These people can show up unexpectedly at any point in time. Junior's a good fighter, and I'm a big fan of his. In fact, my wife absolutely loves him. I don't want to speak ill of him, but just like Donald Cerrone, I have to wonder about his durability at this point. Yes, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yes, he's an excellent boxer, but he can't keep pace with a guy like Curtis Razor Blaydes. He doesn't have that kind of cardio anymore, and I don't know if he can do it over 5 rounds, even though he did it with Blagoy. Blagoy is a much less of a gas tank fighter than a guy like Curtis Razor Blaydes is. Blaydes is going to put a pace on Junior. Junior was able to dictate the pace against Blagoy. It's not going to be even close. And then when Junior slows down even just a little bit, he might be able to stuff the first takedown or two, but Blaydes eventually is going to get him on the mat. And yes, he might be a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but a 35-year-old black belt who's not used to working off of his back, it's not like he's going to throw up a triangle or an arm bar and catch Curtis Blaydes in it. I think Curtis wins this thing via 3rd round TKO. The pick is Curtis Razor Blaydes, and I'm putting Curtis Blaydes in my parlay with Rafael Dos Anjos. Again, that parlay comes out to -107. I tweeted this out early as soon as I could get my hands on these lines. We hit that thing twice for a 2-unit banger to end the night here. So before we hit that recap, I want you all to do me a massive favor. Again, we're trying to get the word out about the Die Hard MMA podcast. Hit me down in the comments below. Let me know what your favorite bets are for UFC Raleigh. Who's your favorite bet? Who's your lock of the night? Shout out to my boy LOTN. And do me a favor, retweet the hell out of this thing. When you listen to this podcast, head on over to Twitter at DieHardMMAPod. Hit the follow button if you haven't already. Retweet the video. After you retweet the video, I will give you an internet high five. Then click the link, head on over to YouTube and subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers over here. Let's make this thing a reality. Love you all. Thank you for the support. Now let's recap those picks. We are going to kick the night off with my guy Nate the Train, who annoys the shit out of me at -115. We're going to roll with the dog Brett Johns at +105 to welcome another newbie to the UFC. We are looking very, very closely at Lina, Lansberg, and Hannah Cifers. We are waiting to see where those lines end up going, and we might be pulling the trigger on both those ladies. We have talked ourselves into the dick kick champion Darko Stošić at +115, and then we are going to rock with our personal biggest dog on the card. We're going to play Jordan Espinosa and just try to abuse this wide line and hope he pulls off a win for us. The big play of the night, we are going to hit 2 times on the parlay, -107, RDA, and Curtis Razor Blaydes. Good luck on your action this weekend, everybody. Hit me up. Let me know what you're betting. Give me a follow on Twitter. Tweet at me. If you have any questions about the fight card this weekend, I'd be more than happy to answer those for you. And as always, let's roll.